So welcome back to episode 2 of our live production series, where I show you how to use very simple tools to create interesting results with effects in your DAW using hardware and software together. In today's video, I'll connect the TR-8 to the Razor Blade, and together we're gonna make something really interesting. In today's electronic music production world, a lot of producers are using off-the-grid elements. So claps, drums that kind of sway in and out of the beat. This makes the productions a little bit more organic and interesting because things sort of work in time and then they go off time and back and forth. So a basic clap you guys have all heard is the 909 clap. And on the TR-8, I've got tune and decay, which are okay, but it's not super expressive. So what I want to do is make this clap really crazy using two basic tools, a delay and an EQ. And this is going to be the end result. So it's really quite simple. What we're going to do here is first add a basic filter delay from Ableton's stock plugins. There it is. There's the filter delay. The number one element for unpredictability is feedback. Feedback creates a lot of unpredictability. So what we want to do is map our decay knob to the feedback, and we're going to crank it all the way up. And we're going to map this knob to all three feedbacks and let them go full blast. So we've got the feedback going on, but we also want to fade it in gradually. So I'm going to map that same knob to volume of the left and right delay. So let's see how that sounds. So now it slowly comes in. We don't have much character. So where the character comes from are tiny delay values. So we want to turn sync off and bring our time down. Now we're starting to get somewhere. But the really interesting thing on these delays is when we start messing with those delay times in very, very small integrals. So we're going to leave our delay knob alone. That's going to bring up our feedback and bring in our delay. And we're going to change the tune knob to adjust those delay times, which is where the real magic is. So once again, let's assign our delays. And let's keep in mind that we want a narrow band. So let's actually just do two of them. And let's only do it from, say, let's do 1 millisecond to 20 milliseconds. And on this guy, let's do 16 to something. Now, it's these differences and these subtle changes that are going to make huge impacts. So play around with it and see what sounds good to your ears. Let's see what that sounds like. Now, the cool thing about using two knobs is that the combination of the two and the various positions create tons of possibilities. So when this knob is in this position and this knob is in this, it sounds like one thing, and so on and so forth. So by twisting two at the same time, you can get infinitely expressive characteristics. So the one problem we've got here is that as we bring up our delay, it's getting really extreme. In terms of the frequency spectrum, we're adding a lot of material to the mix, and it's not only going to hurt your ears, but it's going to hurt the dancer's ears as well. Let's look at what's happening on our EQ window. That's crazy. And you can see that there's a ton of resonance that's sweeping through the range as I increase the tune knob. So what I'm going to do is actually create a sweeping EQ that follows the tune and carves out all those obnoxious frequencies depending on where my instrument is. It's actually a lot easier than we think. So I'm going to use this EQ to kind of check the frequencies of this extreme, if we really turn this up, So at the low end, it's about 548 hertz, and at the high end, about 2.3K. That's really extreme. Now what we want to do is map our tune knob so it sweeps that EQ band around as we raise or lower the frequency. Let's go ahead and put ourselves into mapping mode, map the tune knob to it, and do those frequencies that I found earlier. 2.4 and around 600 hertz, and see if that works. So now this EQ is going to follow this around, and we'll just reduce the gain. Let's see what that sounds like. Already a world better. The only problem is that the EQ is always on, when really we only need the EQ to be on when the feedback is up. So what we'll do is we'll map the gain to that feedback knob, and we'll invert it. We'll say, hey, when the knob is off, the gain on this EQ should be 0, and when it's on, it should be minus 10 dB, minus 11 or something like that. So now as I turn this knob up, the EQ comes down. So with the more feedback, the more EQ, and the more constrained the sound gets. Now this is a really important principle as you start building these effects. You can't just add stuff and add stuff and add stuff to your sonic spectrum. It's going to end up with mud. There's just simply not enough frequency space to allow for tons of effects on every instrument. So as you add, you should always take away. And this is a perfect example of that. As we're adding feedback, we're taking away EQ and carving out the sound space. Let's see what the final result sounds like. And let's hear what my original sounded like as well, which had a little bit more of a rhythmic characteristic simply because I used lower delay values. And this is where your personal sound will come in terms of what you set. And I also threw a little bit of reverb in there for spice. This is video 2 of a 4-part series. Watch the explanation video on the left or the other segments as they're published. The grand finale will be a live performance using all of these elements together on my Facebook page, so make sure you follow me there.